My name is Love Natureman. I've been fascinated by the wilderness and nature for as long as I can remember. Sadly, this glorious vision of nature I had changed entirely.
Where are the big corporations? They're deliberately avoiding taking responsibility for the impact they have done on our environment.
Corporations don't care about nature.
Would you say there are any safety concerns regarding this report? At the potential risk of my life, my mission is to truly make America nature's nation. I've always believed that it is our job to preserve the planet by picking up trash, remembering to recycle, and doing plenty of other things. But aside from that, there are some factors that are out of our control. I set up an interview with the CEO of Big Oil Gas, who can hopefully give me more insight on how corporations can contribute to the climate crisis.
My name is Victor Big, but you can call me Big Vic. What's your name?
My name is Love Natureman.
Well, Love Nature Man. What kind of questions do you have for me?
So, would you say that your company has any sort of goal to preserve the environment?
Yeah, of course. At Big Oil, we're always looking for the lowest carbon solution. And I mean, if you've seen in our advertisements, we're always looking to do best for the environment.
Yeah, sorry, but I have in my notes here that you guys are actually part of a list of 100 companies that make up more than 70% of all carbon emissions. And even though you guys say that you are changing things, most of the time those plans end up being scrapped. And even if changes do go through, they're never the important ones since they would take away from your profits.
I think that's enough. I think it's about time you find your way out.
But I still have more questions to ask.
Don't make me repeat myself.
Okay.
Yes, keep an eye on him.
After interviewing the Big Oil CEO, I realized what I should have been trying to stop all along. Throughout American history, nature has been relentlessly exploited as a resource, driven by corporate greed that prioritizes profit over environmental health. While the natural world is ravaged, the blame is often shifted onto everyday Americans, obscuring and protecting the larger forces at play. True progress demands a shift towards balancing economic growth with environmental responsibility, prioritizing sustainability over unchecked industrial ambition to secure a healthier and more equitable future. In order to actually make a difference, though, I was going to need a plan, a clear path on which I would walk. Corporations have long been central to the American story, thriving in a nation celebrated for its freedom. However, within this freedom lies an unsettling truth. Corporations are often free to pollute the environment without facing serious consequences. From cutting down forests to dumping waste into oceans and contaminating our drinking water, corporations bear a staggering responsibility for environmental degradation. Meanwhile, the average American is urged to recycle, reduce waste, and take public transportation. While these practices are beneficial, they barely scratch the surface of the real issue. As I brought up with the CEO of Big Oil Gas, corporate waste production far exceeds that of ordinary citizens. Shockingly, just 100 companies are responsible for 71% of all global emissions, including big oil gas. But the question remains, why isn't there more being done about this? That's when it hit me. It's not that nothing's being done because of plain ignorance. People don't know the truth.
When it comes to helping the environment, would you say we should prioritize the role of the average citizen in recycling and sustainability?
Of course. Yeah, everyone should be involved. Everyone should help out.
I would say so, because recycling is pretty hard. I think anywhere, even here, it's not like very accessible, and we don't know where it really goes.
Would you say the same, knowing that 100 corporations make up 70% of all carbon emissions around the world?
Oh, no, not at all. In terms, I misunderstood the first question, but no, it's not really up to the individual. After we put it into a recycling bin, it's hard for us to really control where it goes. But I do agree that it's up to the company's responsibility.
The responses we got expose a grim reality. Companies are actively trying to focus on the importance of individual action to distract us from the vast environmental impact of their behavior. If I want to do something, the accountability must shift to those most responsible, corporations. If systemic policies are not enforced and we waste our limited time and energy on small individual changes, the fight for a sustainable future will remain an uphill battle against those who prioritize profits over the planet.
Thrust up, take off, levitate. It's a vibe that they don't demonstrate like.
The Tesla Model 3, the perfect combination of comfort and sustainability, featuring smooth handles, easy mapping, and many other benefits. The Model 3 accurately maps your surroundings, ensuring safe maneuvering every time. By purchasing a Tesla, you purchase a vehicle that can truly help the environment survive. Electric cars produce zero emissions directly and are the perfect fit for nature enthusiasts. Tesla Model 3.
In order to combat these corrupt corporations, I needed to find out how things got to where they are today.
Early American colonists viewed nature through a similar lens as modern-day corporations. Nature was a resource to be conquered and exploited for personal gain, and land was something that could be bought and owned. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that corporations truly rose to power, forever altering humanity's relationship with nature.
Ted Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, was a controversial figure who lived as a recluse in a remote cabin while carrying out a nationwide bombing campaign in the late 20th century. His manifesto, Industrial Society and Its Future, condemned technological advancement and its environmental and societal consequences. Though his actions were criminal and condemned worldwide, his writings have sparked discussions about the impact of industrialization on humanity and the planet.
So, Dr. Krasinski, how would you describe the Industrial Revolution's impact on nature and humanity?
It was catastrophic. It destroyed ecosystems, polluted the environment, enslaved humanity to a technological system that prioritizes profit over freedom and the planet's health.
Do you agree that it laid the foundation for many ecological problems, like climate change?
Of course it did. Reliance on fossil fuels began then, creating environmental destruction we can't escape. Industrialization built a self-perpetuating system that harms both nature and society.
Critics point to factories, cities, and highways as major causes of harm. Your thoughts?
The clear examples of prioritizing progress over nature, factories polluted, highways destroyed habitats, and cities spread over ecosystems, all for progress and profit.
You've said industrialization made us dependent on technology. Can you explain/elaborate?
Are you stupid? Industrialization trapped humanity in a vicious cycle. It creates problems and forces us to rely on technology to solve them, deepening our dependency and eroding autonomy.
Do you think we can reverse these negative effects?
No. The system is designed to resist change, and society is deeply entrenched in its dependence on technology. Real solutions require dismantling the system entirely, but that's unlikely to happen.
Thank you for sharing, Dr. Krasinski.
While what Kaczynski said is true, not everyone embraced industrialization. Movements like Romanticism and Transcendentalism critiqued the materialism and environmental degradation of the era. Thinkers like Ralph Waldo Emerson advocated for sustainability and a moral responsibility to take care of the earth. Ideas that became the foundation of modern environmentalism.
It wasn't just my ancestors who worked to preserve nature. In the late 19th century, conservationists worked to bring a balance to economic progress and environmental preservation. Leaders like Theodore Roosevelt created national parks to protect wild spaces, while another leader, Franklin Roosevelt, created the New Deal, which restored ecosystems and promoted sustainable land use.
Hello.
Hey, I heard you did an interview with Big Vic?
Yeah, I did. Why?
Was there a tall man in black suit standing behind him?
Yeah, I think so.
I'd be careful if I were you. The rumor is, you mess with Big Vic, you mess with the man they call the Hunter.
The conservation of natural resources is of vital importance not merely to Maine, but to the whole country.
The Industrial Revolution sparked the dependence on new technology, and ultimately created what we know today as the common corporate greed. The implementation of such a large resource, such as fossil fuels, has made an irreversible impact on modern-day society. In the early 1960s, Silent Spring by biologist Rachel Carson was published, and it would catalyze the modern environmental movement. Many historians mark the publication of Silent Spring as the beginning of the modern environmental movement. Since I was busy editing at the time, I asked my friend Hamilton Leonardo Kim, or HL for short, to do some research on Rachel Carson.
After World War II, industrial and agricultural practices grew at an unprecedented pace, with pesticides like DDT celebrated as miracles of modern science. But I saw the darker side, how these chemicals were seeping into our soil, water, and air, causing immense harm to ecosystems and human health. I felt compelled to warn the world of a future where the songs of birds might vanish, a silent spring. This was a call to action, to awaken public concern and recognize the far-reaching consequences of our actions on the natural world.
Because of Rachel Carson's efforts, others were inspired to take action. The 1960s and the 1970s became a huge turning point in the environmental movement. People all over the world began organizing, demanding accountability from governments and corporations. This global concern and awareness from the environment was highlighted by the first Earth Day celebration in April 22nd, 1970s.
In response to the growing public pressure, the United States government signed the National Environmental Policy Act into law on January 1, 1970. This act required federal agencies to assess the environmental effects of proposed major federal actions prior to making decisions. NEPA was one of the first major environmental laws in the US. Recognizing the need for a centralized agency to enforce these new environmental laws and achieve the goals set, President Nixon established the Environmental Protection Agency on December 2, 1970. For the first time, a single organization was focused solely on protecting the condition of the United States' air, land, and water. The EPA was able to tackle the nation's pollution problems with more efficiency than ever before. I decided to meet up with a supposed expert on the modern environmentalist movement named Aaron Hunter. Kind of a strange name if you ask me.
Hi. Hi.
Have we met before?
No, we haven't.
From what he told me, the 1960s and 1970s were the peak of the modern environmental movement. It was the most transformative era for the environmental movement because public awareness intersected with political will, leading to systematic change. Unlike earlier conservation movements focused mainly on preserving wilderness, this era tackled broader issues like pollution, public health, and industrial impacts on the environment. The 1970s demonstrated a rare unity of public will, politics, and systemic change. But since then, the will of the politicians and corporations have not aligned, and the willingness to combat climate change has decreased. The momentum could not be sustained. The 1970s were pivotal for environmental protection. Responding to public concern, the US under President Nixon created the EPA and passed landmark laws like the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts. It was a golden era for systemic change, driven by collective will and government action. But this momentum would not last. The 1973 oil embargo and ensuing energy crisis reshaped national priorities, bringing environmental protections into conflict with economic and energy demands. Industries criticized regulations as too expensive, prompting governments to scale back their efforts. This period marked the beginning of a subtle but profound shift from systemic solutions to individual responsibility. In the late 1970s, campaigns like Keep America Beautiful promoted individual responsibility for the environment, focusing on recycling over reducing industrial waste. While raising awareness, they shifted attention from systemic issues like industrial production and weak regulations to the efforts of individuals. The term carbon footprint, popularized by BP in 2004, encouraged individuals to take responsibility for their emissions, shifting focus away from the company's own impact. As fossil fuel companies expanded production, they framed climate change as a personal issue, deflecting scrutiny and delaying the collective action needed to address the crisis. While focus remained on individual actions, environmental crises worsened. Recycling couldn't curb plastic production, and personal efforts couldn't match industrial emissions. In spite of all this, a new generation pushed back, with movements like Fridays for Future and Extinction Rebellion demanding systemic change. History proves systemic action works. From the Montreal Protocol to cap-and-trade programs, collective efforts have tackled major environmental challenges. Individual actions inspire, but systemic solutions transform. The future demands global policies, innovation, and cooperation. Change is possible if we demand it. Our choices today will shape the legacy we leave for future generations. In the face of corporate exploitation of the environment, grassroots movements and legal policies prove that individuals have the power to drive change and influence policy decisions. Greta Thunberg is an example of how one voice can inspire millions. A Swedish environmental activist that began protesting at 15 years old, Thunberg has started global youth movements.
One of the best ways to get a message across is a protest. Climate protests bring awareness to issues that most people don't pay attention to and help make changes at the systemic level, holding corporations accountable. For example, there was an issue of companies greenwashing, which means making false statements about their sustainability. Companies like Volkswagen and Toyota have faced billions in fines for deceptive actions such as issuing false claims and not adhering to environmental regulations. Volkswagen was caught implementing software on its vehicles that created fake data to pass emissions tests. But after pressure from activists, the European Union has passed new legislation to fight greenwashing called the Greenwashing Directive. This directive will ban misleading environmental claims and hold companies accountable for their labeling. Protests and activism display the effectiveness of taking collective action to demand systemic change. When people unite for a cause, changes are made.
So after all this research, what is it that I learned? And what can I do to put a stop to the corporate abuse of the environment? Before I could totally figure that out, Aaron Hunter invited me out to Pike Place Market for one last talk.
Hey, listen, Big Vic, he's after you. The expert guy. He was in disguise. You have to get out of there, or else...
And I hate it at the same time, hiding all of our sins from the daylight, running from the daylight, running from the daylight. Oh, I love it and I hate it at the same time.
Come experience the wilderness, Dior Sauvage, the essence of the forest.
So all along, it was you. That's no reason.
Seems like you finally caught on. Ever since that interview, I've been tracking your each and every move, from the places you ate at to the girls you fumbled. You never did make it easy. I figured you would catch on eventually. I was just doing my job, nothing personal. I should have known better than to trust anyone who comes out of nowhere. Now that you've figured it out, I guess we both know how this will end.
I said I'd keep an eye on you. Didn't I? Your boss. His company. You're destroying the environment. The average person has to suffer for it. Like I care. My boss isn't gonna get half our profits just for some trees. I'll make sure the whole world hears about this.
No, you won't.
We're too busy being distracted with man's creations. So much so that we don't notice the true beauty.
window to address climate change is rapidly closing. While individual actions like recycling or driving less are helpful, they barely make a dent in the larger problem. The real perpetrators, large corporations, produce the majority of emissions and environmental destruction, and attempt to cover their tracks along the way. As I've discovered, companies from the past such as British Petroleum and companies of today such as Volkswagen both try to push the responsibility of climate change onto the average American. My name is Love Nate Sherman, and this message goes out to anyone out there who wants to protect our planet. If we waste our limited time and energy focusing on small, individual changes, we risk missing the chance to make the systemic changes needed to protect our planet. Until then, I'll be here. I'll be waiting.
Places you ate at, to the girls you fumbled. You never thought. You good?